welcome to the Unstuck Podcast. I want to start with a quote. Heather, will you read a quote? And I want to know if anybody can guess who and where it comes from.
Yes. Yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift. That is why it is called the present.
Now, some of you already know this comes from. This is Oogway from Kung Fu Panda. And it's just one of my favorite quotes from the movies. I think it's really insightful, and it's something I've been thinking a lot about. I started thinking about this a number of years ago while Heather and I were starting to do some mindset coaching and group mentoring and things like that. And it was why we get certain types of feelings. And what I realized is that it comes from a desire to control mostly. Now, I'm going to put up on the screen here in the edit an infographic that I then started working on. And by the time you see it, I'll make a link in the show notes, and I might do some updates when you see it. So it might not look exactly like this. This is how I have it right this moment. And what I realized is when I was in negative headspaces, I had certain types of feelings, particularly towards my future and towards my past, that was influencing my present, my current state. And then after thinking about it, I realized that the current state is literally the only place you have any sort of control or anything you can do anything about it at all anyways. And so that's what I want to talk about today is the present and how we can take our thoughts about future and past and make them more productive so that we can have a more calm and peaceful and joyful present and utilize our actions presently to be more powerful in those as well.
And that's not to say that future and past aren't important things to be.
No, they're critical actually.
Yeah. It's just if it's once you live there and stay there that they become problematic.
Correct. And so one interesting thing about Heather and I's dynamic is we realize that Heather's very much a past thinker, and she's very methodical, and she's very careful, and she learns from her mistakes, and she's really good at being thorough.
Learning from them also means I will beat myself up.
Well, I was going to talk about that. So there's the good things about it, and there's bad things about it. She'll beat herself up, and so there's a lot of regret, which is one of the key indicators you're in a negative past thinking mode, and there's feelings that you want to change the past or that nothing's good in the present.
Something ruined
Correct.
because a mistake happened so like it's forever altered or changed.
Right. And I'm a very future thinker. I like to dream. I like to make goals. I love vision boards, and I like thinking about how amazing our future is going to be. But I also, when I'm getting in negative headspaces about the future, I can feel like I'm never good enough. I'm never finding, I'm always seeing somebody else doing something better than me. It's very comparative.
It's not being exciting. It's more depressing that you don't have it yet.
I don't have it. I can't control it. And there's a desire that you want to enforce it. And the thing about past and future is that both of these are spaces where you cannot control them. I know what some of you are thinking. You're going to say, well, yeah, I can control my future. I can make my future happen. I don't believe that. I do believe that you can influence your future. You can do it in a way that's actually even very powerful to the point that it's pretty much control. So I do believe that. I do believe you can influence powerfully your future to pretty much its control. But still, you can have all the best things happening in your life, and still you can make all the perfect choices, and still a meteor could hit you tomorrow. Literally there's a statistic that could probably tell you that how much a percentage a meteor could hit you. That is a possibility.
Well, that's the least likely.
Of course, because you could be hit by a car, all sorts of things, not by your fault.
Each person has their own agency, which can interfere with our results.
Correct. So you can influence your future to optimal results. And so I will use the word optimal a lot. to get yourself optimal happiness, optimal joy. So let's go back to like the negative headspace and where we find ourselves a lot sometimes. Um, uh, what I think the past is for learning. And so if you're in a negative headspace, you want to change it. If you're in a positive headspace, you want to receive it and you want to learn from it. And so whenever I recognize that I'm feeling regret and I'm feeling like I want to change something that I've done in the past or something like that, I recognize that I'm in a negative headspace for my past, and I try to switch it to I want to receive this and learn from it, and then that informs my present. And I think that's really important.
So that you can use your choices now
Correct.
to influence your future moving forward. I think like if you're like me, and I'm guessing a lot of people are, because I'm sure I'm not like the most unique human on the planet. Like if you, I came because I feel, let's back up here. This is a tricky one to talk about. Um, because of my faith in God and my belief, we're members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I believe that I know where I came from and I know where I'm going. And as part of my faith, I have like a rule book of a right, good, righteous way of being. And so because I know the basic answers of that, making a mistake means like I've elevated myself up to this level of like I have to be flawless because I have the answers. And so like that has been a difficult thing for me because I've created this unrealistic standard for myself. So when I make a mistake, or I don't want to say this is current because I've actually made a lot of headway, especially this past year, of giving myself grace and saying, I might not have been optimal, but I'm learning. But like I have had a lifetime where I would just beat myself up because I made mistakes and I wasn't worthy of receiving good things. I believed I wasn't worthy of receiving good things because I needed to be perfect or flawless before I could, and in like all aspects of my life. And so it was a never ending battle inside of myself that even if I was doing really well in, A, B, and C, X, Y, and Z were, hey, I'm still failing there. So not good enough yet. And it was just a recipe for depression, anger, frustration, because after a while, you're trying and you're trying really hard and you're human and you're flawed and it's difficult. So
what would you say your outcome, like roots and fruits, right? Like what were the fruits of that kind of
thinking
yeah
was irritability, depression, like as a mom, because like literally just shut down because it's like you have all the responsibility of everything in your life, and if something goes wrong, then you failed. It's overwhelming. And so literally I would shut down certain parts of my life. Like I had moments, especially with like young kids. I definitely think I had some
postpartum.
postpartum depression, but I would shut down and like, tune them into a show, and I Netflix binge just to like escape and self-soothe the anxiety and the depression from not being able to be everything I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Which is interesting too, because like all of these habits or tendencies, they're self-destructive, like the pornography, it's all self-soothing. It's to escape. It's just to escape the pressure of what you're like prescribing your life to be. And so living in the past for me was like I couldn't look to the future because I had to make sure everything that I was doing right now was perfect and flawless. And so future dreaming, like was near to impossible. It's still not my strength.
Yeah.
I do better, but it's still not my and that's okay.
I do think I think that's important to say that it's okay if you're stronger in a certain area.
Yeah.
I do think that just getting yourself into the positive headspace in both ways you look at past and future is possible, even if you're stronger in one or the other.
Well, and so one of the strengths, and we've talked about this before, um, well, you and I have, was that like because I had such a high level of accountability that I placed on myself, like I didn't do anything, any like big grievous bad things. I couldn't, like literally because I couldn't live with myself. That makes sense. Like it actually stopped me from making mistakes that I might have regretted my whole life, right? Those big ones where you look back and you're like, oh, I wish I could change that. Um, and so that was a perk for me. Like while it wasn't healthy way of thinking, that was a perk that because I was conscious of wanting to
Yeah.
be good and wanting to be better, I didn't allow myself to do
Well,
things that I
that's
would regret.
interesting because, and I think, again, because of my future type of thinking, I tended, when I'm in good headspace for thinking, I tended to, even though I made regrettable decisions, I was always very hopeful, and
And that's
and
that's the
that's the
positive
positive side of
because I don't
future thinking.
I struggled to find that hope and forgiveness and grace for myself. And on the other hand, like so while we were different kind of opposites there, you actually allowed yourself to stay stuck in a pattern that was harmful, probably
Yes.
because you didn't have those strengths. But like on the side of forgiving yourself and trusting God to have grace and all those things, like you've actually excelled way faster than I have, and I I'm harsher on myself. So it's just so fascinating, like that each side of things comes with weaknesses and with strengths, and
Yeah.
understanding like it's not all one good or one bad,
Yeah.
just like people. It's not we're not
So
all one thing.
I'm going to probably mention this real quickly as I talk sometimes, and you'll probably hear me talk about this in other episodes whenever I talk about past, present, future. I'm going to say your past is for learning, receiving. Present is for your current actions right now, whatever you're going to choose, and your future is for hope and
Creation.
creation. It's looking. Your desire is to influence. So future is for hope and influence. Past is for receiving and learning, and present is where you get to act. And when I say present is where you get to act, this isn't a choice. I don't think past the way this works is how anybody gets a choice. Your present is literally the only place you get to act, and it's where you get to make those choices for present and past, however they happen. Because you didn't get to control your past, so you're not going to get to control your future either. So either way, the now is the only thing you get to control. So if you find yourself in a headspace that is negative, if your results, especially, this is important, if you find you're having repeated negative results, repeated results that you do not want, it is likely you're in a headspace that is negative, that you're past. So for instance, a lot of times if you're in a negative future headspace, you're gonna see the future as fearful. There's anxiety. I would say primarily all feelings of anxiety, unless you are in a present, if you have a bear in the room, you're having anxiety and fear for something different, right? But if you're just sitting there,
Like immediate danger, that's
that's
obvious.
immediate danger is not the kind of fear I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fear where you're like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make the next payment. I don't know uh, what it's going to be like to date this person. I feel lonely. There's all these feelings about your future that we feel. That kind of anxiety, I believe, is entirely us desiring to control a future that we just simply can't. And so what I try to do is decide, okay, if I'm feeling that feeling of anxiety, and I feel lots of it all the time, I stop and I say, okay, where can I bring hope to bear, hope and gratitude to bear, and see the future in a way that orients me in a way to get optimal results.
So, like, can we make it a personal example really fast? I was just
Sure,
thinking
yeah.
about one with me. Um, in the beginning, after the disclosure, I I remember like because it had been hidden from me for almost 2 decades, and I had no clue. I was like, well, what else? What else is there? If I don't know this about you, who else are you? And so I had this like kind of mountain to climb of can I trust you? And what if you're lying to me? What if you're still lying to me? And I remember saying like, well, I want to know the truth because I'm not going to invest my heart if you're just going to hurt me. Like if I'm just going to find out in a few months that there's more lies or that, whatever, then I don't want to invest right now. And I was living in this fear of the future that I needed surety, I needed security, I needed certainty in order to take a risk and have hope. And really, you can't. There's no risk and there's no hope if you already know the answer.
Correct.
And so like as I've digested,
And it's important to realize that these feelings where you needed to figure some things out were important. Like, was I somebody that was dangerous? Was I somebody who was hiding a lot more things? Those aren't invalid thoughts.
but it was like for me, I wasn't actually like if I took all the evidence and things that were like made sense, like it was like, no, I feel like I can trust you, but what if? All the things I didn't know.
But what if?
What
Yeah,
if? And it
the
was
future.
scary in the
Yeah,
future and I couldn't be sure. And the thing is, like, it was also my detriment. Like none of this actually worked because what ended up happening in the beginning of our marriage, and it's complicated. It's not just one thing. An aspect of what happened in the beginning of our marriage that led to um some deconstruction inside of our marriage was that, well, I checked off all the boxes and I made sure I did everything right and I got myself a husband who didn't have any big red flags and problems, and so I'm good. The people that have problems, they must not have done the things that I did, and that sounds so judgmental. I don't think I had really much thought to that, by the way. I'm just like, spelling
sure.
it out. But I did all the things, so I'm good. But because I was good, I stopped. Well, I didn't stop trying, but I certainly didn't give the effort that is needed and required to build a relationship, because it's not like you get
Which is
married
ironic.
and
Is
you have
is
it.
that still technically good then?
Huh?
Is that still technically good? Like you
What
say
the
that you're good with your.
Oh, right. Like it doesn't make any sense. None of this actually does. If you break it down and look at it logically, feelings and emotions are so strong and so compelling that we believe them as true without even like questioning them
And we
sometimes.
defend them.
Yeah.
We hold on to them so tight.
Yeah.
And I
So,
and I know there's going to be people who hear what I say, especially about future stuff and past stuff. They just be like, "But I had this happen. There's no way that my future can be any better." You see what I'm saying? Like it's like the headspace has to be here because of my situation, because of what's happening to me. You
yeah.
know.
Well, and then for a while I was beating myself up like in my healing process for like cuz I believe that healing was going back to how I felt before, because that was what I knew. And I couldn't do that. Like
Let's
that's
call
living in the
that
past again, right?
the new skin angst.
Yeah,
You have
like
new skin. You have new bot a new you've metamorphosized into something new,
and like
and it's different, and it's a struggle.
I literally was like I will be healed and I'll be okay once it never bothers me again. Once like I don't even care that it happened. And it's like that's just not true. Like we have a whole new reality now, and life is going to look different. And I was waiting for something that couldn't happen to tell myself I was okay. And so I was allowing, unconsciously allowing a lot more pain to stay present in my experience, in my healing process, instead of really understanding how far it had come. It was just uncomfortable new skin because
Well, and
it's unfamiliar
and
territory.
think about me before disclosure, before T Day, for truth. I was again being in my negative future thinking space, thinking this was just going to ruin my life.
Yeah.
I had such high amount of anxiety that there's just no way I could hurdle this. Just there just wasn't a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we were we were we had these little relationship cards we were reading through this morning on our drive, and one of them was like the biggest in the past decade or something. What's the number one or the blessing in disguise, right? And your immediate answer was my pornography pattern because it brought me here, like literally without. It's so crazy how his his issue just magnified mine and caused both of us, like, he had a magnifying glass on himself and his issues, and I had one on mine, and this whole scenario actually like opened up a door for us to step up into something better and to take the opportunity to grow. um Jennifer Finlayson Fife, she's a marriage and family sex therapist. She's known as like the LDS sex therapist, I think, online. um she was saying once how when these things happen inside of marriage, it's actually like it's divine, beautiful gift. And like here I'm thinking like this is the worst thing in the entire world, but as what I'm learning as I go through it is that these things are almost required and necessary. Um, unless somehow you've managed to like both be emotionally mature and just have your stuff together, both of you at the same time. I think most couples go through um something like this, and it's this really beautiful, incredible opportunity if you choose for it to be. Um, if you choose to learn from your past.
So something you'll hear Heather and I talk a lot about, we'll just casually say it occasionally, is beautiful mess. Something that has become more and more apparent, especially through this past year, but I've thought about it a lot beforehand. I personally, and I wonder if this is because I'm more of a future thinker, I just, I can see, I see symmetry in the craziness of this mosaic of life. Sorry for all the word scramble there, but like just
He does that. He
all
pulls
the
out words out of nowhere.
all the craziness of things that have happened. I can see how they've worked to our good, and it's I didn't always see it that way, and occasionally I still don't see it that way. Sometimes, I'm at different levels on that, but a lot of times I really can see where it has benefited me, and so going back doesn't make sense.
Well,
Even though I would sometimes I do want to, and I could feel the soothing feeling of that. Boy, wouldn't it be nice if this wasn't my problem, if this wasn't part of our story, if I was talking to you guys online, but it wasn't about an old pornography pattern of mine. It would really nice
well, and
if
I'm not
that
gonna
wasn't
lie,
part of it.
there's still a little part of me that says like that would be really great,
Of course,
really lovely.
of
But
course,
but
but there's something beautiful
would I
about
trade what
seeing it.
we've would I trade what we've gained for the fact that we might be able to help others escape the hurt too, you
And
know?
I believe most people are this way. If you asked how would you change your life, especially when you're in a feeling of providential, a feeling where you're just like you are in a good space, most people won't want to change it because who you are now was made through these challenges. And I do think wording things is important. So you'll hear me say challenges instead of problems. Um,
Here's
and I'm not trying to soften them. Some of them are very serious, and I would consider some of my problems to have been very serious. But I believe they were challenges to be met and to
to
be,
and to help us reach our full potential.
yeah.
They're not, oh, you came down and here you failed. The failure is that you don't take the challenge and do something better with it.
There's a very interesting book I was reading a little while ago. It's one of those books that I feel like might have been better as a TED talk than a full book, but it was still extremely interesting, especially the concept. It was this author who was looking at the way the way things become stronger, and he didn't have a proper word for it, but it seemed that organic organic mechanisms, be they something like mechanical or be they even something like less more esoteric, like say like a relationship or something like that, um, the word robustness didn't work. So say you have like a pair of scissors. The first time you buy those, from the first time you buy those, they're starting to wear down, even if it's very slow and you don't notice it. Every time you're using it, they're never getting stronger. But for some reason, something like our muscles, our arm, as we lift things to a point, they can't break, but to a point, they keep getting stronger. And so he called it anti-fragile. And I thought that was just a very interesting concept. But it goes to what we're talking about. Those challenges, those problems, if you can look at it as a way to strengthen me, to make me anti-fragile, I do not have to like them. And I don't think you have to have all of the challenges you have. I think you can do things in a way that's more optimal for
Well,
yourself.
if you don't need to learn a lesson, then I believe in a loving God. Like, it's not like, nope, I need to dole out your fair share. There's something to be gained when we go through anything. It's
And
not
yet we
just
will always be met with a moment where we're like, this does not seem like it adds up,
or
right?
fair.
This is not fair.
Oh, I had that massively. Like,
I
I
don't
didn't
think a
do
single person
anything.
escapes that feeling.
Yep, yep.
But I believe that it is for our good. And I do believe that when you can step back and get a further up look, it will always make more sense than you might even want it to.
So I was thinking as we're talking, just a couple more like practical examples of how this has worked for us. Um, and taking the opportunity to make a decision in your present to influence your reality. So I think for both of us on this, when T Day happened, we didn't, neither one of us chose for it to happen the way that it happened.
No.
So obviously, like for me, I didn't know, I didn't choose this. I had a whole like little sad story about how I didn't do anything to deserve this. I shouldn't be hurting right now. God, why aren't you taking my pain away? Because I didn't do this. Like, and it was really hard too because he had a profound feeling, a profound spiritual experience where he felt God's love and forgiveness, right after this happened, and he told me about it, and I was happy for him. But I'm like, where's mine, God? I didn't even do it. Here he had been like the perpetrator. He was the one that was doing the wrong things, and so I had this, this had happened to me, and
Which was funny. The whole experience was pretty funny because like I was afraid to kind of share it at first because I didn't want it to seem like I was being manipulative. Like, hey, I'm forgiven. You should forgive me now too, kind of thing. I didn't want it to be like that at all. At the same time, if I didn't tell her, it would have been hiding, which is what I was trying not to do anymore. And so it was just that funny little. So I was like, I'm just gonna tell her, and it was a very poignant experience.
you like called me like right after it
Yeah,
happened, right?
yeah,
Um, so and then on the other side for Cameron, I mean, obviously he had made decisions that allowed him to be caught. So like you could say like he did make decisions that did that. But but it was still something that was outside of his control. Right? Like uh despite his, I guess you could say, despite his choices to be careful and hide, it still happened, right? So out of your control.
right.
And so I want to bring this up because what really helped us, and I think this principle of taking a clear look at what you can do in that moment to influence your future is powerful. So on my end, I remember after I had my coaching session, my breakthrough with, um, we should actually have her on. I'll have to ask her before we say anything about who she is, but I think that would be fun actually to hear her side of things and what
Sure.
she thought and like as she helped me through it. But after I had that breakthrough, I remember a distinct decision. I'm like, my marriage doesn't have to be over, and I have a part in this, and I have things I can do. I have things I can do to make this better, and I'm not going to sit back and just let whatever happen. Like, I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight for what I want. And that really opened the door for me to, and I know you speak to this, but I think that by me saying I'm sorry and apologizing while you were in the middle of apologizing for the thing that you like were so scared and had dreaded for 2 decades, like for me to sit there and apologize and own my part in certain things
I
was probably helpful, right? I think we've
Yeah.
talked about this. Was probably helpful that you didn't feel all alone and
Well,
like,
in a previous episode, we talked
yeah.
about the shame bubble, and I think that component of it gr greatly increases the popping of that bubble. And I think it's very important. I think it was very helpful.
So yeah, he wasn't alone
And you
in
didn't
on
have to, and I didn't ask you
yeah.
to.
Well, no, but I knew if I was going to be honest with myself, like it's not like I had shown up. I knew I hadn't shown up perfectly. I knew and I was working on it. What I appreciate about the scenario, and I think I said this morning. I remember saying it to you just recently, was that it was the kick in the butt I needed to change things. Because I was working on it, but because I felt so secure, it was like, we'll figure it out. It's
Right?
okay.
It's funny
And
how it happens
so,
that way, huh?
yeah, and so it was kind of the kick in the butt that I needed to say, hey, it's not so secure. It's not exactly what you thought it was, and you better do your part and fix your part. And it didn't, I never once took on, I don't think I ever did. Did you remember a time where I took on that it was my fault that you went to porn?
No.
I don't think I ever did. I don't remember feeling that way. And he was really good about assuring me that it wasn't my fault. And I understood that. Thankfully, I did not have to go through that. Um, but owning my part gave me something to do instead of
Yeah.
sitting back and like, oh, what's going to happen? Is it all going to fall apart? And I still had plenty of those feelings to go through because there was uncertainty of what would happen. But at least I was able to do something and I had action. And then on Cameron's part, um, he'd made a decision. Like before, he had said, I'm saving my life. And it sounds so silly, right? Because if you step outside of the scenario,
No, it's
looking at
irrational.
it, it sounds ridiculous.
It's irrational.
But in the inside of it was, I have to do this. I have to lie to save my life. I have to hide this to save
But
my
you know,
life.
one thing I definitely don't think I could have predicted is how much it enhanced my life, how
What
much it
enhanced your
gave
life?
me.
Telling or
Yeah, telling the
disclosing
truth.
it.
Yeah, disclosing gave me so much. I thought at the very most it was going to be a bad time for a few years. That's what I thought. The very
At the
best.
very
The
best.
very best.
Yeah.
And so
But it would hang over for the rest of life.
I did not realize that it would create such an incredible amount
It was an
of love.
opportunity for us to just stop being stupid kids and grow up, is what it was. Ultimately, we were both still really underdeveloped and immature in a lot of ways when it came to each other and building an actual sustainable, strong relationship. And that's just the brutal truth. It's
Yeah.
not very flattering, but it's true.
And it's still developing.
But we're way better than we were.
Yeah.
Um, but also you in that moment, you could have decided, nope, I can't. I'm going to hide. I'm going to keep hiding. And you could have drawn it out and that really could have influenced, right? If you didn't make a decision to be honest, you could have influenced things to where I wouldn't have been able to trust you at all or move forward and we would have ended the marriage would have ended. If you had said, nope, I gotta hide, I'm gonna just say this because I don't know. I don't know what would have happened. Thankfully, we're not there. Thankfully, that didn't happen. But in that moment, you said, nope, the way that I'm going to be safe now is to tell the truth. And that's what you continue to do. And so I bring this up because I think personal examples are always the most potent. Um, in that critical moment where we were making decisions that were going to influence and affect our relationship and our future dramatically, we both made decisions to act in our own personal power instead of be acted upon and just let chaos happen. But it's entropy, and we can do a whole thing on entropy.
Well, yeah, I think that
But
deserves a whole.
just real fast, the principle of entropy is that if you leave something alone, it like take a house. If you abandon that house,
Its natural state is chaos.
yeah, and it will deteriorate. There will be like moss coming through walls, or not moss, but like
Mold and
yeah, like it will just fall apart. Look at abandoned mall photos online, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But you take that same structure and you put people in it, even if it's like, say you put like 25 toddlers or, destructive people in it, it will still fare better to be inhabited than it is uninhabited. And that's the law of entropy, is that if left unattended, things will deteriorate. And so our choices, when we use our agency to not make a choice and to just allow things to happen, it's chaos. But in that moment, what really and I think if we could just share, at least from my point, like one thing from this episode, um, to just drive in, is that when it's time to make a choice out of your own personal power that helps you create the results that you
And
want.
recognize all your choices are right now. Don't wait for the perfect situation. Don't wait for a future that looks the perfect way so you can finally act on it. Don't wait for a past that gives you everything that you have so that you can know the right thing to do now. Your only time you get to do something is right this second. The thoughts you have right now, the promptings you feel, the things you know you should be doing. It's for doing them now.
You are always making a choice. It's just whether or not you're making it from a place of personal power and an intentional choice, because it's a choice to do nothing. It's a choice to hide. It's a choice to ignore. It's a choice to shut down. And that never, ever leads or creates the results that you want. In fact, it's always the opposite, because you're doing it because you're afraid of something. And so if you're afraid of something, the worst thing you can do is not make a decision.
So I'm going to wrap up now, but I want to talk to you, say one thing that's really important. Think about all of this talk about the beneficial way of looking at your past, present, and future as like straightening an arrow. Think of yourself like an arrow. If you have an arrow and the back of it's bent and you try to fire it, where is it going to go? If you try to have the front of the arrow bent, where is it going to go? Being in a net positive headspace will straighten that arrow. It will get you pointed towards a beneficial and beautiful future, using your past for all the wisdom that you've learned, and using your present for where you act right now, and it uses your future for where you get to hope and have gratitude and think about it.
And know where you want to go.
Correct.
But don't live there.
You're oriented. I like the arrow because it orients you.
But the real potency is your action as you.
And your action is pulling that bow.
Yep. Because you can have the arrow and you can hold it and you can just point it towards that future, and then drop it. Right? That's inaction. That's just like, I know what I want, but I'm not gonna do anything about it because I'm scared.
Inaction is an action.
Yeah. So I think for homework tonight, or today, but it's nighttime. You get to watch the sun go down with us. But I think as far as homework goes, I think it would be a really good exercise to identify what your natural leaning is. Are you somebody that lives in the past and you have regrets and you don't feel good enough because you haven't figured everything out, and it's just always like looking towards what you didn't do right? And then also too, maybe you're more positive. Maybe you are a constant learner, right? Maybe you've overcome that negative part of it. But you look and learn.
Maybe the thing to do is to identify outcomes in your life that are not coming out the way you want them to, and then maybe recognize, like, what are your thoughts on that? And if you find yourself in negative headspaces with those, try to reorient and see how it goes for you.
Yeah. And then the way to know that too, if you're thinking about, like, because that's negative in past, with the negative in future, like, I remember the other day we were working out and I think it was, I don't know, but you were saying, like, what do people do to live? We're talking about a neighborhood that we drive through. Like, what do people do to be able to make money to live in a place like that? And like, you've said that so many times. Like, that's a really good example of like living in the future and letting it depress yourself, right?
And I can see my present actions where I'm getting negative outcomes because I'm oriented that way, and I'm trying to reorient in a way that's much better.
So if you're having those kind of issues and you're feeling like depressed about like, I don't know how to get there, like that's definitely you're leaning into the future. And so identifying like where you stand will actually help you know where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are. And then what I encourage you to do is once you understand where you are, find out what it is that you want, what it is that you're creating, and what you can do right now in this moment to take action
Yeah.
towards that, to influence your results. And if you're past, like, so for goal setting, that's kind of straightforward. If it's past and you're regretting, just pick one regret and find out what did you learn about it. Write down the things you learned from it. Why are you grateful that you now know this? Like, turn to gratitude with it, because if you could find purpose, it's all about framing. We are creatures, because we've got a frontal cortex. We put meaning. Frontal lobe, sorry.
I don't know. We need to ask our friends.
Because we have human brains and we're not animal brains, we actually have the ability. What we do is we put meaning to things, and so find out what it is that you're grateful now you understand and how it's helped you. Like, turn to gratitude.
Turn to gratitude for your past.
Reprogram, create a new paradigm. And it will shift how you think about things.
And then with that gratitude and new paradigm from your past, now I strongly suggest, and I think we should do a whole episode on this. I strongly suggest doing a vision board. I strongly suggest doing something that orients you to the future with your goals.
And the reason why vision boards work is because it's just a constant reminder. You see it all the time, so that when opportunity comes, like, even you don't even honestly, like, you can do, there are workshops on vision boards, and I don't even think we do it optimally, but literally because it's just fresh on your mind and you see it all the time, that when the opportunity presents itself and you remember, like, hey, I want this, like, your brain works for you. So, like, I don't even think we do it optimally. I think we probably could do it more effectively. But even if you just surround yourself with what you know you're wanting to create, you open the door for it to happen. You are allowing it.
And by making and then after gratitude for your past, hope and goal setting for your future, you'll find that your present actions more and more are to open up, like Heather was saying. It creates the space of opportunities that you'll then be able to grab those good results, those optimal results. Again, I'm influencing my future. I'm not controlling it. You don't get to control it, but I can influence it. I can powerfully influence it to where I'm practically controlling it. And I do believe you can do that.
I think where gratitude, like, fits in for the future thinking people is gratitude for where you are currently, and acknowledging that where you are, you've overcome a lot already, and you've already, like, because that was part of it. That's what I told you the other day, was like, you're going to get that goal eventually, but because you're growing, you're going to have another one out here. So when are you ever going to be happy?
Right.
So you have to, like, find gratitude in the present moment, because you've already achieved some of those goals.
Totally.
Like, you already have, and because you have them, sometimes they can just, like, oh, well, you take them for granted.
Well, that's, we'll talk more about that. But yeah, one of the greatest aspects of gratitude is I think you end up finding that, honestly, it's in gratitude when I realize I've achieved goals that I wasn't sure I thought I had yet. So gratitude's a huge thing. We should actually talk more about that in a different episode.
Oh, a whole episode on gratitude.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us on our drive home. This is the Unstuck Podcast, and we will see you next time.
Bye.